day 24 of the 31 days of culture. And this is like, oh, and of course I didn't mute the one thing I should have done. So of course, this has happened twice now.
I mean, you
where
sound great.
I didn't mute everything. So, oh well. So anyways, we're here. Let me turn it over to my buddy Kaleem. We're talking about remote work. We're talking about connection. We're talking about all kinds of cool stuff. But at least I want you all to know who the heck he is. What does he focus on? Why is he such a cool dude? So Kaleem, introduce yourself to everybody.
Cool, man. Appreciate you, Chris. It's always a fun time hanging out with you. Love the sunglasses. We're going to Burning Man next year together for sure.
Yes.
With that outfit. But my name's Kaleem Clarkson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Blendme Inc. We help startups and small businesses improve the remote employee experience. So that's something that we're passionate about. We've been around since 2013. So we've been doing it for a little bit. And really exciting. Also have a podcast that Chris has so graciously been on, I think twice actually, and called Remotely One. We got a community over there with about 3,000 Slack members. It's free to join. So yeah, everything remote work. It's what we do, sir. It's what we do.
So this might be a great place to start because we're talking about building community, but you went and built a pretty big Slack community that's very active. And I think a lot of people get a lot of value of being able to connect and talk to people that aren't necessarily at their job, right? Where they can talk to other people who are remote around the world, or other people having some of the same challenges, or maybe they need something. So talk a little bit about that, why should people come to that Slack community? What are they getting out of it? And, kind of why do you keep it going?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and a question our CEO keeps asking me. AKA also my business partner here too. So plain and simple, when we started in 2013, our services for Blend, we're targeting companies, we're targeting managers, we're targeting leaders of companies to try and help them develop like the best employee experience from a remote employee perspective. But then we realized, geez, we don't have much for any individual contributors. Like, we didn't have any services for a non-manager. And we just kind of thinking about that. And again, it was kind of, 2013, 2014, there was really no place for us to market our services. So we just decided to create Remotely One as a community in 2015. And we started off with this super ugly splash page we created for MailChimp. And that was it. I think I remember the first ad that we did was like the LinkedIn for the remote workforce, I think is what we deemed it, And, people joined the email list. We sent out emails. And then, of course, Slack comes out and start noticing some people are using Slack as like a community chat place, a chat community. So we weren't doing much with it. I was like, hey, why don't we just try to open it up? And, so we decided to create like an application process. I think one of the things we wanted to create with Remotely One is that we wanted a place for remote professionals to connect with, not a place for somebody who's interested in remote work and has never done it and is looking for a remote job. I feel like a lot of communities kind of get bogged down with people looking for work, which is nothing wrong with that by any means. But we just kind of felt like we wanted a place where people were already remote professionals that could connect. So we actually created an application process. It's free, and we screen every application. And we try to only accept people who are currently in a remote or hybrid role, so that people are connecting with other people. So yeah, we started off originally doing meetups at different co-working spots. I'm located in Atlanta, so I think we did that for about 2 years, where we would do a meetup every other month at a co-working spot, and we'd bring people together, and we'd have these cheesy icebreaker games and candy and wine and different drinks. And basically the point of it was just to connect. So yeah, it's grown a lot. I think we got featured by Owl Labs at one point as a top Slack community, and we went from 300, 400 people, and now we're well over 3,000. So I think that with the podcast, like telling people's stories of remote work, I just think it's kind of becoming a cool little community. And we don't do too much with it, Chris. We don't try to manage it too much. We try to, delete as much spam. There's always people trying to spam people, but besides that, we kind of just let it grow organically and let it do its thing.
Yeah. Well, you do some great video content, and I remember just recently you did one kind of making fun of or kind of poking at the bear a little bit about, how will I ever have a community? How will I ever, have anyone to talk to if I don't go into this really crappy office with an open floor plan?
Yeah.
And I thought it was, this is an area that you and I have talked about before and connected on before. And we've talked about how with my remote employees, I had to intentionally coach them to say, listen, you may not have your work best friend anymore the way you did before that you go out to lunch with them. It might be different because maybe it's somebody you're going to be in meetings with, or you're going to be, working closely with. And you're going to have to go and find community is important. And having relationships and friends and all that's important, but it's maybe not going to be at work anymore. Like maybe you're going to have to rethink. That was just easy. It was called proximity, right? You happen to be around somebody, and then naturally you might start being friends with them or doing stuff with them just because you happen to be next to them in a cubicle. And so when you're intentional about it, not only can you replace maybe what you think you're losing and gain all the benefits of remote, but you might actually find that friend or that community that's better.
Yeah.
Because just because you're sitting next to Bob, you may have nothing in common with Bob. But then you end up going to lunch with Bob because you sit next to him every day. Instead of, geez, I'm going to go join this club. I'm going to go volunteer at this place. I'm going to go help this community that needs help. And then I'm around other like-minded people who think like me and who can, fill my bucket up in a much more meaningful way.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's one of the great gifts of remote work. There are many, but that to me is one of the great gifts. Right.
Yeah. Chris, I mean, you and I never met in person. We met virtually. And I love this story. It's the podcast I love. I wish they would do some more of them. Guy Raz, how we built this podcast on NPR. There was a story, and I believe is it Whitney Wolf? Is she the founder of Bumble? I can't remember if that's correct.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, everyone fact check us on the chat. Let us know if it's Whitney Wolf. Let us know. I'm pretty sure it was, but it was an episode kind of during the pandemic, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And they had just implemented Bumble had never had video. None of the dating apps, by the way, prior to the pandemic, none of them implemented video. Pandemic happened, they had to pivot. Well, what Whitney Wolf was talking about on that was that they implemented video, but they realized that their success rate of dates and relationships were increasing because you built a relationship with someone first virtually that was less intimidating, less, you don't have to commit as much, right? Like to be on the video screen, and you can kind of get a feel a little bit. Well, that's exactly what you and I did, Chris. We've met and we talked plenty of times, and then we got a chance to meet in person in Vegas. So I 100%.
And don't forget about DC. Hold on. Don't forget about DC.
That's right. I skipped DC. That's right. We had a great time in DC, but like that was the whole point, right? Like we built some sort of relationship first. I mean, it might not have been the full relationship, and I didn't get a chance to, sit next to you and smell what you smell like. And by the way, you do smell good. I met you in person. You have a good scent.
I try.
So yeah, I mean, yes, you absolutely, I would say a majority of the relationships I've built over the past 2 or 3 years was 100% remote first, then you meet in person. So yes, you are correct. You can absolutely get outside of your box.
Yeah. And it just, listen, I've used this example a few times, but when we went from riding horses to riding in a car, there's things we had to change and do differently, right? We're still going from point A to point B, but now we need gas instead of, I don't know, water for the horse or whatever, right? We need the car keys instead of a saddle. I mean, it's just about learning a new way to do something. But in this example, I think it's about learning something different that leads us to a better path, a better outcome, a better way to do something. Now, not in all regards, right? There are certainly jobs where being in the office is not only better, but mandatory. I mean, you just can't put the widget together into the other widget unless you're there. I mean,
you can't be a grocery store clerk. You can't be a grocery store clerk remotely.
Yeah. Now, I have seen some pretty interesting things happen with remote work that I really didn't expect. I checked into, we went to Jazz Fest this year, and the Airbnb that we used was like this apartment complex. Right. And we walk in and there's a monitor and there's a virtual assistant, a virtual hotel person to check you in. And they were like outsourced, like somebody out there in the Philippines.
So it was it was a live human being on the other end, or was it a AI?
Live human being, and there was one there 24 hours a day, but they were outsourced in another country. Right. And so everything was they needed, but they could talk to them and help the customers solve whatever problems they needed, but like they weren't there. Wow. Right. 24-hour person for probably a lot less money than what they were paying somebody locally.
Correct.
And that person, because I started getting really curious, I started talking to them.
Of course you did. You said, hey, so where are you working remotely from? Where are you located?
and found out not only are they working remotely, not only are able to have somebody 24 hours a day there to answer questions, that person was doing this in like 10 or 12 different hotels at the same time. So they had like all these screens up, all these things, and they were on live at the same time. And so basically like all those different hotels were like a different user in the room. And then so they could just, oh, please hold, and then talk to that person, talk to that guest, because they weren't needed that often.
Right.
But when they were, so anyways, I mean, there's so many incredible ways we've seen work that we never thought a bank teller could work remotely. And yet during the pandemic, they did. They are definitely pushing the boundaries, but I don't know, maybe one day they'll figure out how to have us be able to use our hands virtually, and we can put together the thing on the assembly line, right?
Oh my gosh,
better robots.
Have you not seen that yet? Did you see? So wait, so you didn't see the clip of the surgeon performing the ACL surgery remotely? That was crazy.
It was
crazy.
That.
I couldn't even believe it. And I was like, wow. Now I think they were doing it on a banana. I don't think it was a live person, right? Yeah. It wasn't a live person. They were using a banana to show, because I guess it's a very similar doing the stitch or whatever. But like, you're absolutely right. I was just watching a podcast episode from I'm drawing a blank. They have all the great remote work research, the Flex Index. There we go, the Flex Index and Rob. And he was interviewing the individual from the Castle company that's doing all of the statistics on building occupancy. You know, like, because they're the ones with the badge swipes. So they have all the stats. They put out all the reports of how many people are returning back to the office. And that's where everyone's getting the data from. And the CEO said something really interesting of you know, like the pandemic kind of awakened innovation muscles within the company that they hadn't activated in a long time. Like the innovation was there, right? And there are plenty of people and plenty of genius people were there, but they didn't activate their innovation muscles because they were just doing business. And I guess what they ended up pushing, they pushed out some really high level innovative things to kind of, you know, determine if somebody who swiped their badge had gotten you know, the vaccine, or they answered the questions correctly. They pushed that real fast, which helped their business. And I just love that example of the pandemic forced a lot of people to think outside the box, which is why most people worked remotely, because that was outside of the box. So yeah, forced innovation, sir. Forced innovation.
Yeah. And so we tried to recreate that experience, right? So when something really acute happens, you're right, it does activate people to suddenly get more creative, to think harder, to work on the problem. Otherwise, it's easy to just let it go, do the other stuff. There's always something more urgent, but there's nothing more urgent than how in the hell do we get our workforce to work when they can't come into the office,
or prevent people from dying. I think that was like one of his employees in the first week was like, hey, can we die from this thing? And everyone's like, yeah. So like that seriousness was like, whoa, we have to act,
Right. So we used to, and I trained a lot of companies on this, is how do you use this thing called the tsunami planning meeting? And we used to bring people in once a month, and we would give them just their team. So we want them to be some psychological safety there. So we wouldn't mix them with people they didn't know. We mix them with their team, the people that they work with every day.
Okay.
And so let's just say it's a customer service team. And we would say, once a month, 30-minute meeting. What would happen if the head of customer service got hit by a bus tomorrow? Like, what would happen? Right?
What's your disaster contingency plan, basically?
Like, go talk about it. What would happen? What would you do? And what we end up getting out of that is a few things. They get really innovative, right? About what we could do. They actually start talking about, that our boss is the only one that has the super secret code to this one super secret program to push this one button every day to make sure we can do our jobs. And we're like, holy crap, what did you just,
You're the only one?
And they were like, oh yeah. And the boss is like, oh yeah. And then like, sometimes I have to share my super secret password to this one person when I'm on vacation. And you're like, I'm sorry, you're doing what? And it's like, you realize there's some crazy process that like, no, this needs to end right now. We're going to fix this. This cannot continue. Right.
Yes.
And then they would come up with other ideas that would just lead us to a better way to work. Maybe a contingency plan, like you talked about. Maybe it's just some good idea. Now, sometimes they would come up with stuff that you would expect. It wasn't anything, mind blowing. But what we also got out of these meetings was those two people over there don't shut up, and those three people over there aren't talking. Why? Right? This is a fake meeting about a fake topic. No one's going to get extra work. No one's going to get in trouble for saying anything. This is just a fake brainstorm, right? It could be what would happen if our phone system went down for a week. What would we do? I mean, it's just anything.
Yeah.
And so we had to go back, and this is a great opportunity for managers to go and coach those people and say, hey, these two, why is it you're just like dominating the conversation? What's going on here? Why do you feel, and we would need to work through their issues. Usually they felt like they weren't going to be heard. No one was going to listen to them. They weren't going to get their idea out. So they went the opposite direction and talked way too much. Right. And then those other three, it was like, they didn't feel psychologically safe. They felt like no one was going to listen to them. They didn't have strategies. They're super introverted. They didn't have any strategies on how to like actually get their idea out and to feel like, and so as soon as we did that coaching, within a few months, that team is humming, right? Because they feel good. They're in it. And now all of a sudden you got a great equality happening, and they're having a great meeting. And that then, and this was like this is what I love. All of this crap we came up with was like an accident. I was like, hey, we should maybe do this thing. And then we found out, we can actually coach people out of that. And then we found out that, once they start doing that, right, they get really, really good. Right. We just kept finding out all these accidents. Right. And so when they started like taking that team to the next level, then they started coming up with even new stuff and even better stuff. And like it just kind of grew out of this really simple idea of maybe we should force a fake bit of stress into the situation and see what happens. Right. And it's amazing what people can come up with. And this is, I know we weren't going to talk about AI, but maybe we could dive into that for a second. This is where I'm really curious about AI, because the ability of humans to come up sometimes with really great ideas. It's not often, but sometimes we stumble upon a really, really great new idea.
Okay.
And I haven't seen AI doing that yet. AI is really good at like telling you a lot of the good stuff you probably should have remembered or should have known, or you would have known if you had that experience, but come up with something so awesome and new and killer, right? I just haven't seen that.
Yeah. I mean, but isn't that, I guess I'm hoping AI, because we don't want to lose to the machines, of course, Chris. I mean, we've all seen the movie Terminator. I mean, let's be honest. No, I'm just saying, like, I would hope that AI could never actually do that thing, give you some ideas, but like, I would hope that's where the human piece always comes in. That's just my hope. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, but like, the way I use AI right now is a lot for summarizing things. I think it's really, really great for summarizing crappy notes, summarizing transcripts, and also giving, I may have an idea of an article that I want to write, but I don't have a structure of the article. I have a huge case of writer's fright. It's just, I don't know. But yeah, that's how I personally use it, is kind of structuring your thoughts and using summaries. But yeah, I think that is a good example of how just doing something different makes people feel a little bit nervous. And yeah, we'll figure out how to utilize AI in society. Yeah, I think it's awesome. I can't wait to see what happens, as long as the machines don't win.
Well, there's also, there's the Terminator, but there's also Wall-E, right? And I actually think Wall-E is a bit more of a better example of what's probably going to happen. A lot of fat in these chairs, just playing video games all day, playing Bejeweled all day in Fortnite. And the AI and all the robots will just do all the work, right?
See, I don't mind that, but see, I think we'll get back to the way history kind of used to be, because like, so many things we argue over today is about money. Like the whole world. I mean, it's cool. We all love money, but like the wealth and there's just so much that we're all running around trying to earn. I would love to kind of try to get back to those days where, if I want to just be a painter, let me just be a painter and paint all day. Maybe just wear a cloth. You know what I mean? A toga.
Not to get too nerdy, but if anybody really wants to think about some of the pros and cons of all this, like literally this has happened in Star Trek already. Star Trek has already done an episode of this. One of the variations of the story has already done this, where people forgot they like made this supercomputer that did everything, and they went back to just being painters and farmers and simple life. And then like no one knew how to use the machine. Like generations later, they all just, and then the machine just like stopped functioning properly, and like no one understood what was happening, right? Because
we talked about this before, right? Like, as far as you being a Star Trek geek over Star Wars, like that was it. Your Star Trek or Star Wars, right? I couldn't remember.
Man, I mean, like 50.1% Star Trek, 49.9 Star Wars. I mean,
right on the edge.
And you know what? It was probably way more Star Trek a few years ago, but all the new Star Wars stuff that's happened is so really great. Added to the,
although the Star Trek had a moment there, they had a moment with those movies. I thought they did great, and then I don't know what's going on.
Well, there's all kinds of you haven't seen all the Star Trek TV shows. There's Discovery. There's all these new series now. Yeah, Paramount. So that's added to in fact, that's actually the best stuff right now. The best stuff, because the technology and the writing is so good.
Okay, I have to give it I have to check it out. I wasn't about to sign up for another streaming service though. Paramount Plus, come on.
I think they were showing Discovery for free. That's the first reboot of stuff on Paramount somewhere. But anyways, that's the kind of things you can do when we work remote. You can put on Star Trek over on the iPad, and you can be doing your work and watching.
I'm pretty sure people have been doing that in the office forever, Chris. And I think how much work got done in the office during the Masters and March Madness. Let's just be honest, okay? Nothing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why most companies just take the Friday off after Thanksgiving. Right? It's like, yeah, okay, we know you're not coming in.
We know.
Well, we've talked about a lot here. Is there anything else going on in the world of remote that you think we should be keeping our eye on, or we should be talking about?
Yeah, I think we all need to pay attention to the companies that are doubling down on workplace flexibility versus the companies that are not. And to me, there's this thing that I don't think is getting enough press, that we all need to kind of just look at from a standpoint of the business model. So I live in Sandy Springs, or Atlanta, Georgia, and State Farm insurance businesses. So insurance businesses, I hope that we can agree, are probably the best business based on predictive analytics, right? Like, or predictive statistics, right? Like they're giving you, you're paying them in case some shit happens, right? And they figured out the model of predicting how often those things are going to happen. Therefore, they figured out a model so that they can make a ton of money, which is why insurance is one of the biggest industries in the world. So State Farm, one of the top insurance companies, moved their headquarters to Dunwoody or Sandy Springs in Atlanta. And they built these huge skyscrapers, brand new. They started building in probably 17-ish, roughly. And they were done in like, I don't know, probably October or November of 19, or maybe a little bit before that. Pandemic happens. All right. So nobody's going to those brand new, beautiful skyscrapers. And I see this article in the Dunwoody Business Chronicle. It's not all over. This article wasn't posted in the Washington, the Washington Post, the New York Times, none of this. It wasn't recorded at all. Well, State Farm built these huge skyscrapers with like 100,000 square footage of office space. Everyone's moving to Atlanta. Mercedes-Benz moves to Sandy Springs as well. Like, this thing is happening. You know what, Chris? They sold their building back to the developer this year, or late last year, excuse me. So what does that mean to you, Chris? Insurance company, they do predictive analytics. Why would one of the top insurance companies in the world build these skyscrapers that have all of their employees move to this area, put all this money in the city, have all these grants, and then turn around and sell that building back to the developers less than a year of them completing the building? Why do you think they sold the building, Chris?
Because they see remote work is either going to be continuing to happen, or is going to be better for their business, or going to be, whatever. I mean, there's something there. Or, I mean, it certainly could be something to do with the real estate as well, that independent of their people. But listen, the net is, it's remote work, right?
Right. The world has changed, and this building is not what we thought it was going to be, either how much it's worth, or either the usage that they were going to get out of it. It's some combination of those things. So to me, I think that's the biggest story out of everything that we've seen. Even Atlassian, buying Loom for that crazy amount of money, they're going all in. I think that story, the fact that it wasn't on a major publication, is very interesting. And the fact that, like, we're not hearing from the Allstates, we're not hearing from the insurance companies that do all this predictive analytics. So to me, I feel like this hybrid thing was a trade-off for a lot of companies, a compromise, and a lot of people are going to probably go back. So if I were you all, I would keep focusing on what those insurance companies are doing and start thinking about like what your business can do moving forward. So that's what I would look at.
Well, Kaleem, thank you so much for being a part of the discussion today. This, of course, was all to hopefully give people some value, talk about culture. Obviously, today's was more about remote work culture and a little bit about AI, the Terminator, and Star Trek, but that's cool.
Hope people enjoy it, man.
Yeah, and I hope people will consider checking out my new book that comes out on Halloween, October 31st, The Power of Company Culture, the second edition. It's the one with the orange cover. And if you want to pre-order or grab it on the 31st, I would so appreciate it. Love you to death. And
Chris,
if you do,
you better send me a signed copy, damn it. I need a signed copy of this one.
Yeah, signed copy. Signed copies are available for $1,000. I'm just kidding.
Done. Done. Awesome.
All right.
Man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
You're absolutely welcome. And peace out. Thanks.